Well, we're back again, Mel.
We are. Good morning.
Good morning. And you look very relaxed. It looks like you're having some real good fun.
I'm at the lakes. Yeah, sporty Mel, lake hair, spending time swimming lakes and kayaking, which I love. So yeah, I'm sporty Mel today. Not in my
Right.
usual
So the lakes,
place.
we talk about the Lake District,
Yeah,
for those who don't
yeah,
know, which is kind of Middle England. It's not
yeah.
quite north,
Cumbria.
is it?
Yeah, yeah.
Beautiful part of the country.
It's
I'm very
stunning.
envious. I'm
It's
very envious.
stunning, and there's nothing better than swimming in a lake with nobody in it, and you just yeah, yeah. Didn't quite make it to the other side because it was like a really long way. I was like, I've actually got to go back. But much easier to get to the side in a kayak. But yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
Glorious. Whereas I'm down in Hampshire and it's a beautiful day today and it's a beautiful countryside. So I can't grumble really, but it's very different. But yeah. So today we're going to talk about the power struggles,
Yeah, power and control. Yeah,
power and
yeah.
control. Definitely one of those things that crops up a lot, doesn't it? Without
I
even people realizing, I don't think.
I think it does, and it's interesting because we might not want to think of ourselves as either as controlling, but I think
I think
everybody
everybody.
is in on a spectrum of controlling stuff with and yeah, so you might not think you are, but as someone was cooking dinner in my home a little while back, I was like, could find myself hovering over to see how they're cooking, and then realizing actually the want to butt in, not in a critical way, but almost in a helping way. Like, oh, here's where the garlic is or whatever. But actually realizing that for the other person that would be quite disempowering. So to like step back and go, well, I'll just leave you to cook dinner and go do something else. So the hovering can happen, can't it, in relationships where
Yeah.
our way of doing something may be very different from how somebody else does it, how you load the dish or how you hang the washing on the line, all of those little things that you do differently that can become power struggles. And these are little ones, but we can get into some much bigger ones. Yeah.
Yeah, and I always go back to even my childhood because there was something about, I can remember winding some string up, and I remember kind of, well, you've got to do it this way, saying to the other girl in the class, and the teacher saying, no, it's okay, it doesn't matter. But for me, it meant I was doing it right. I
Yeah.
had to get it done the right way, otherwise I'd be in trouble. And it
Yeah.
wasn't over the ball of string. So I think it that was a kind of metaphor for getting it right. And if I don't get it right, then that
Yeah.
is part of our needing to have control in our lives.
Absolutely. And it's one of the things I often say to couples is you need to watch your need to be right. Do you need to be right, or do you need to preserve your relationship? You don't always have to be right. Yeah.
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 But I think it could often come from our childhood, can't it? That sense
Definitely
of
comes
I
from
want
the I think all of our controlling behavior is underpinned by that is the need to feel safe. So
yeah.
if somebody doesn't have enough information or there's too much uncertainty, then we don't feel safe. Let me give you a prime example from my own history. So one of my partners, I'd be like, let's just go away for the weekend. Yeah, let's get in the car and go. And I'm like, I don't care where we're going. I don't care where we're sleeping. We'll just work it out as we go. I can deal with a high level of uncertainty. If we can't find anywhere to stay, I'll just sleep in the car. I really don't give a shit. And yet, my partner's like having kittens going, well, where are we going? And how are we going to get there? And where are we going to sleep? And what's the weather going to be like? So somebody needs much more of a plan than I do. I'm spontaneous and kind of like just take off. And that can be either you can experience that as grounding for somebody who's like a million miles an hour, or it could be quite challenging because you're slowing it down and you're kind of making me asking all these questions, and I could even experience as that you don't want to come with me, yeah, that you're
Yes.
putting things in the way.
Yeah.
However, realizing that actually you need more safety and certainty than I do, and so actually that let's just take off of the weekend becomes a I'm thinking we could go to Wales this weekend and go hiking and visit the beach, and we could have some You could have some lazy breakfasts, cook breakfast, lazy mornings, and have a hike, go for dinner at the pub, whatever. And as you outline a plan, that person has some idea of what's coming. This is where I think we could stay. Do you want to have a look at the cottage? And so that person has ability to then see what is going to be happening and has much more certainty to buy into and agree to the weekend away. And so we come with different thresholds for risk and safety. We come with different needs and wants. And so, we can butt heads as we do things differently. Yeah. I love there's a lovely framework is the rule of three. And the rule of three is when I'm making decisions, what's good for me, what's good for you. And the third one is what takes care of the relationship.
Oh, yes. And that's the one that gets forgotten. I had
Yeah.
a conversation a little while back with a couple I was working with and said, is this good for the relationship?
Yeah.
And they both stopped. It was like, wow, they hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think sometimes we have to, when we're in relationships, it is, well, maybe I'm not going to get on my own way. Maybe I got to compromise. But
Yeah.
is this good for the relationship?
Yeah. Maybe if you want me to come and see this movie with you, then you come hiking with me. And also we don't have to do all this shit together. If you really hate this movie, I'll go find someone else to watch it with, or I'll go on my own. So that we don't
Well, that's
always
the
have
other
to be
thing, isn't it?
together. The
Yes,
space,
yes.
having
And
that,
that's
giving
why,
the
is
other
it good
person
for
the
the
space.
relationship, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Does this add to the relationship, or is it detracting from it? So the rule of three is a really nice one to think
I
about.
like that.
Yeah, I can make this decision, but does it serve me? Does it serve you? And does it look after the relationship?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I want to go back to the beginning of relationships because I
yeah,
think the one thing I notice a lot is that couples get together and it's the honeymoon period and everything's easy. And yes, of course, everything you do, you want to please the other person, you're enjoying each other's company, and there is this. It's just easy. I'm going to say everything just
yeah.
falls into
You might be
place.
eager to please.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and you're absolutely eager to please because you want to be with that person, and that's it. But as the relationship develops, that's when the power struggle can often happen
yeah,
because when you first meet, well, I'm gonna say, for example, when you first meet, you want to look after your man, you want to look after your partner, so you cook the meals, you look after, you do the washing, you know all the
you might.
chores. I'm
I'm
just
like, nah.
I'm just putting this scenario up. I'm not saying
Like,
you
cook
now.
your
I'm not
own
saying
fucking
me,
dinner.
but I am saying it can happen so
Yeah,
readily.
yeah. There
And I
can be
want to do everything
a
for
need to
you.
want to look after. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
But then after a while, it becomes, well, actually, you're taking me for granted.
yeah.
Actually, you're not actually offering to cook a meal. You're not offering to clear the table, do the washing up, do the
Yeah, if
washing.
you're sat there,
So,
if you're sat there scrolling on your phone while I'm running around cooking you dinner, then the resentment of what the fuck are you doing
exactly.
is gonna kick in. I think this is where, knowing yourself, being self-aware, and
Yeah.
is a real benefit because actually I'm a bit too long in the tooth for all that bullshit. I'm like, this is equality right off the bat.
Yeah.
I'll cook dinner tonight, you cook dinner tomorrow night, or let's eat out. Yeah,
Absolutely. But it's something I notice so much.
yeah,
Come to me or what someone comes to me
yeah. The lack of
say,
equality.
they're
Yeah.
taken, I'm being taken for granted. You
Yeah,
don't notice me. You're not being an equal partner
yeah,
in this.
yeah,
And that's where I see that's where it goes wrong. And I think I see this so often. I think, hold on a minute, you're not actually working this out at the beginning.
yeah,
Yes, of course, you want to do things for the other person, but hold on. I say, with relationships, well, it's almost like when you take a job, you have a contract. And I don't see, that sounds a bit harsh for a relationship, but you have, well, okay, why not? Who's going to do what? Who's going to do this? Who's going to,
yeah. We need to keep having these conversations. I
yes,
don't
I
think
think
it's.
constantly.
I think if we could take a lot from business actually, like performance reviews, and bring them into
Yeah,
relationships to have these conversations. And I think a lot of this is because people haven't done their own inner work, and so if you have no identity, if you don't know who you are, you could almost become a bit of a chameleon that is actually like, oh, we'll go where you want to go for dinner and we'll just do what you want to do and we'll just listen to the music you want
Oh,
to listen
yeah.
to, because there's no identity there. And so you get these people pleasing where it's like, and nobody wants that. I don't want a lapdog that's like, oh, I'll just follow you around and do what you want to do. I want somebody who says, actually, I want to do this, and I can decide whether I want to join them in doing that. So that lack of identity, that people pleasing, I think it might serve a purpose at the beginning of a relationship, because yeah, you want to do everything I want to do. Actually, long term, it leads to resentment, and that resentment often then leads to self-entitlement and anger. And it's kind of like, well, I'm not doing this because you don't do that. And
Yeah,
it can become a bit tit
absolutely.
for tat. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And there is nothing worse actually. It's not with that people please. Oh well, we'll do what you want to do. I mean,
yeah.
it's kind of a bit yucky, but for the
You
other
need that
person, they've
resistance.
always got,
You want somebody who says, no, I want to do this. You need some
yeah,
tugging. If both people are going to be honest, you're not always going to agree. I often see couples who say we never fight, and I think actually that's not so healthy, is it? Because who's just putting up and shutting up, putting up and shutting up and putting up with stuff and editing what they really want, or have they not learned to know themselves enough to actually own any wants, needs, or desires?
yeah. And I think from the other side, the person who's always expected to make the decisions is very wary, and then
Yeah,
they're almost being they're almost being put up to fail, aren't they? Well, we always do what you want, and I
yeah,
don't want to. And it's like,
yeah.
wow.
Where was your input in that? Yeah, yeah,
And I think that's where a lot of that resentment can come in.
yeah,
Well, for goodness sake, why can't you make a decision? Why can't you be the leader for a change? Why can't you take the, yeah? And I know I've been in a relationship where they always made a decision of where we were going to go. And then when I suggested somewhere, it bloody well sulked the whole day.
oh wow,
And that was just
yeah,
horrible. So I
yeah,
think there's something about that as well. Hold
yeah,
on a minute, we've done everything you want and you're happy as long as we're going along with you. And
yeah,
it's another control power kind of thing going on,
yeah.
isn't it?
I think the
I just
opposite happens as well, that where people don't make the decisions and it's like, what's going on? Why aren't they choosing the restaurant? Why aren't they picking what we're doing on our day out? And actually, sometimes it can be confidence issues, like, I don't want to get it wrong and the shame of getting it wrong. So I opt out and leave all the decisions to you. And as you said,
mm,
that's very taxing. It kind of means that I've picked up the reins of the relationship and you're on my coattails almost. And so, yeah, that pressure to kind of do everything because the other person hasn't taken up the reins. Yeah, that don't think that serves either party particularly well.
no, it doesn't. Yeah, I think it ties in with so many things, doesn't it? Where we're going to go, who's going to drive, if
Yeah,
is it my car or our car,
yeah,
um, who chooses TV programs. I mean,
yeah,
so many things. When we eat, what we eat, where we eat.
yeah,
It goes into a lot of different areas.
yeah,
Oh, uh, do I look okay in this? Oh no, I think you look a bit of a mess, or you don't, you look up showing too much cleavage, or you're all those kinds of things. Or this is the other one, which dress do you like me in? Well, I think you look good in both, and terrified to choose because they're gonna get, well, what's wrong with the other one?
yeah. I mean,
Um,
how well we take the criticism or feedback that we're given is often a big part of this, isn't it? I love the saying that behind every criticism is an unexpressed wish. So we can ask and kindly and respectfully for what we want rather than criticize, because we hit those all important shame buttons that have people blowing up. And I think this is a big one I see, particularly with male and female relationships, where somebody tries to be helpful, but the other person experiences it as a criticism and like blows up or shuts down and like you're interfering. So yeah, that when to step in and help and when to kind of sit back. It's not easy, is it? I can always remember being with a guy and on like where he's like looking on his map to says trying to find. We're in New York trying to find the hotel, and I'm like, hey, and he's like, no, I'm sorting this out, and he's looking on his map, and I'm like, hey, and he's like, no, and I'm like, so I stand there quietly, and he's like, I think it's over there, and I'm like, it's there. Look, you can see the tower. The hotel was like the light was like it was just in the distance. You could literally see it. So yeah, I think asking directions, stuff like that, and gender differences are wired very differently. Women tend to be more collaborative around asking for support. Men seem to have a much more fierce sense of independence. So we can get into gender differences around how we kind of support each other or don't. Yeah. I'd like to I think it might be, we can say all the things we do wrong, but I guess some of the things that might be more helpful, how you can do it differently. So asking for what you need rather than criticizing, like you're always late home, could be turned into, I'd really appreciate it if you could come home on time. I would feel cared for if you came home on time. Yeah. You always leave your shoes in the middle of the floor could be a request, as in, when you give a you always or you never, when you attack in your communication style, the other person is
Always and never.
often feels attacked, and then they defend with, well, you're always, you're always on your phone, so that they throw a stone back. So yeah, changing our communication to something more respectful and can be a real game changer. How we communicate. I think if you start with
Oh yeah,
the I language, then you're owning how you feel about something. Not you make me, but when you come home late, I don't feel massively cared for in those moments.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you hit the other button on the head. I think that one with the always never.
Yeah.
You always,
Absolutes. Yeah.
and you're always irritable. You're always bad-tempered. You never say thank you. You never help. And the other person immediately, you're right, they feel on the attack. So
Yeah.
it's sort of being careful occasionally or sometimes
Yeah.
those words. I feel that sometimes you don't do that. Or I
Yeah.
feel that you occasionally, there are times when I feel you don't hear me.
Yeah.
Although I do feel sometimes you are a bit grumpy sometimes,
Yeah.
more times than often, rather than always. And I think
Yeah.
that that just is that
Yeah.
will create real control
Yeah.
because that person feels disempowered
Yeah.
it's on the receiving end, doesn't it? And you've got nowhere to go with that.
I think another one is splitting the ambivalence or the difference. So if somebody does something different to you, that you can honor that it's their way, that there's your way of doing it and my way of doing it. And this is where we get into, I think, a lot of battles. It's like you can have two people in the same room recanting a tale, and you would think who was actually there because they see it so differently. So with them making different meanings of it. And so splitting the ambivalence or the difference is about saying, when you chop the carrots, you chop them into circles, and when I'm cooking, I might chop them long ways into like sticks. And so that neither is right nor wrong. It's about saying that this is the way you do it, and honoring that. Yeah.
Because neither's wrong.
No,
But
and it's not worth the relational fallout on how you chop carrots or how you load the dishwasher. So there's lots of picking your battles, which, is this really worth arguing about? And often it's our own anxieties, our own need to have, things a certain way. And you're right, when people move in, if they move into the same space and they're living together, then, do we have all the toiletries out on the windowsill in the bathroom, or is somebody else likes things really neat and they go in a box under the sink and you get them out and put them away? Yeah, all of this stuff kind of, it rears its head when people are living in the same space or sharing the same space.
yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
think then if you get one person who's tidy and one person who isn't,
Yeah.
and then the tidy person clears up behind the untidy
Yeah.
person without respect.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to get you a tray to put all your things in, your keys and wallet, because you're always losing them. I think that's a controlling way of saying it. Whereas actually, how about just thought, would it be help you if we
Yeah.
had a place where we could both put our keys in?
Yeah, it's not
Very
always what you say, it's
difficult.
how you introduce it and how you do it, isn't
Yes.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's the other one, another one that comes up. Where's my shirt? Where's my socks? Where's my? Have you ever hear that
Yeah.
one coming up a lot? I do
I
because
hear that from kids and adults. And with adults, I'm like, actually, you're an adult. There's a lot, there's something about taking responsibility and growing up and putting your own shit away, isn't there? So you know where it is. If you're having to ask your partner, where's this stuff? Well, you're turning into child mode. Yeah. Yeah. The
yeah, yeah,
responsibility is yours to know where your stuff is. And yeah, we might all misplace stuff and ask for a bit of help. But if these patterns are like ingrained, then yeah, there's work to be done. I also think there's some good questions we can ask that are really illuminating, because your partner doesn't think like you. And
no,
this is the
yeah,
problem we get into, that you think the same way as me, and so therefore you come to the same conclusions as me. And so actually, one of my favorite questions to ask is, why is this important to you? Because it gets through the layers of what's going on here. So working with somebody, and she says, he says she drinks too much, and I'm like, is this drinking too much, or is this your judgment on drinking too much? But asking the question, why is this important to you? It drills through the layers, and we can find out that actually he's not drinking too much, but there's an anxiety here that you will drink too much, and actually that doesn't end well, and it's never not ended well in this relationship that she's in as an adult. But actually, when we say, why is this important to you, what's it triggering? Yeah. We find out that actually there was an alcoholic dad in the family. When he drank, he got quite violent, and so she's like anxious about his drinking. And so actually, I think I might have turned the genders around on this one, but yeah, to be able to reassure you that I'm having a glass of wine or a beer, and actually, I'm not going to finish the entire bottle. But I hear your anxiety around that. To be able to talk about what's the anxiety here, and why is this important to you? Yeah, what stories are you making up around this, or what have you got in your head that is, this is either going to get worse, or I'm worried about what is going to happen that
yeah,
might not have happened yet. So
yeah.
why is this important to you is a really nice question. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think back to one of our previous videos that we made was about curiosity. And I
Yeah.
think it is ask the question rather
Yeah.
than why is that important to you?
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, even if it is the dishwasher, I load it differently. Explain help me understand why it's important.
Yeah.
And it could be a very good reason that actually
Yeah.
we can pack more in and it's more economical. We're not spending so much money on water and
Mm.
electricity. It but if you don't understand what it is,
Yeah.
then you're just defending your corner, and then it is the
Yeah.
power and control battle.
Yeah. Or another nice one is, help me understand how you got to this thinking, because showing your working out helps you understand the differences. Like, somebody might say, actually, can you bring the kids over? Maybe co-parenting. Can you bring the kids over on Tuesday because I know you're going to be in town? And that person's like, well, no, you changed the plans, and you're becoming all controlling. And they're like, actually, I just thought it would save you an extra trip because you told me you're nearby. And that other person is actually, no, it's controlling, or no, it doesn't fit for me because I was going to stay overnight and bring them yet tomorrow. So you don't know the other person's working out. So when we ask, tell me, how did you get to this thinking or this conclusion? Then we get more of the other person's frame of reference of, what's going on for them that we won't know. Yeah.
Exactly. Back to the curiosity. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the working out. I like that. They're
Yeah.
working out.
And I think we should probably be talking about our relationships, because we're talking about, like, what do you want for dinner? What do you want to eat? We're not talking about the process of relationships, almost the mechanics of it. It's like, what's important to you in a relationship?
Oh,
What
yeah.
do you value? Is it honesty? Is it integrity? I value that trust, that accountability, reliability, that actually when you say you're going to do something, you do it. And
Yeah.
so often, when one of the things I hear a lot in the power and control battles is, I've asked somebody to do something, they're just not doing it. Yeah.
Mm.
And actually, is it because they've forgotten? Is it because they don't see it as important? Is it because they don't have a lot of accountability or reliability? And so rather than you never put your shoes away, we can have conversations around actually, when you tell me you're going to put your shoes away and you don't do it, actually that I don't, then I stop believing those words because the action doesn't match. And so we're calling out, but we're also naming the lack of reliability or accountability that somebody may have or not have. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think those conversations are important as to what's important and what are
Yeah.
priorities, because people they don't have those conversations. And then if you know it's something that triggers your partner for whatever reason, whether it is tidiness, whether it is
Yeah.
loud voices, whether it is, I don't know, it could be a million different things. But if you don't know what it is, that the workings out behind that
Yeah.
person's way of being, you can't begin to even have teamwork or a partnership.
No, I'm boundaries is talking, I'm just naming Brené Brown's aspects of trust, but boundaries I think is another one. Like if you
Yeah,
don't know that somebody doesn't want you chattering at them, if you're in a new relationship, you don't want somebody chattering at you first thing in the morning, then you can say, I'll come and get my tea or my juice or whatever when I'm ready. Or I prefer you're not in the bathroom while I'm using it. Whatever we need to be able to ask for. Yeah.
yes, and that I think that really creates that partnership rather than power and control, because
Yeah.
then it can trigger so much, as you say. If you need that peace and quiet first thing in the morning, and somebody comes in singing at the top of their voice, it feels like you're being controlled, especially if you said to them, "Look, don't do that," or "Stop doing it." You haven't explained why,
Yeah.
and therefore it feels like a power struggle then.
Yeah.
Shut up, why can't I sing? And it can, I mean, that's just one small part, but it can be in any area of their lives, can't it? Any area
Yeah.
of their
And
lives.
the willingness to hear, I think this is a really big one, isn't it? The willingness to hear and respond to what someone else wants or needs. And I hear so many times that, oh, I'm not going to ask because they just won't do it. And so there's a vulnerability in asking and trusting that you'll hear me and listen. So what I ask couples to do is to hear what is being said and actually repeat back. This is Did I get this right? Am I understanding? And we're so busy talking about behaviors, aren't we, that we don't really talk about feelings. You ask somebody, how are they? And often they'll tell you what they've done. They won't tell you how they're actually feeling.
Or
The
they say,
feelings,
"I'm fine, I'm okay."
yeah. And some people can't are really bad at naming their emotions. The feelings wheel's a good one for this. Go Google it
Yeah.
if you're listening to this and you want to be able to name your feelings better. Go look up the feelings wheels. Right, you'll find lots of them out there, and with all the emotions on, because actually we're not talking about feelings. We're not talking about actually I'm feeling upset, I'm feeling disgusted, angry, excited, let down, disappointed, all of the stuff that's all vulnerable or anxious. So getting people to talk more about how they're feeling rather than just what you're doing all the time.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Otherwise, it does feel like controlling, and I think that I hear that a lot as well, where one person will control the conversation. They don't let the other person in.
Yeah.
Um, when I'm working with couples, I'm very keen on ensuring that each person is heard in equal amounts of time. But
Yeah.
I do find that sometimes one person will dominate the whole conversation, and then when the other person does start to speak, the first person will then interrupt and take it over again.
It's really much harder than we think, isn't it? Because I think, trained listener, I think I would be really good at it. But actually, when you're with somebody and they're having a conversation and they're starting to say stuff and you're thinking, well, no, it's not, that's kind of not why I do it. You kind of want to butt in and like correct the narrative with actually I don't do that because of that. I do it because of
Yeah,
this. But
yeah,
actually to sit back and wait for them to finish can be quite hard. We can be triggered by the conversation. We might want to defend ourselves. We might want to correct.
Mm.
And so yeah, to actually it's something I've been accused of. Let me finish. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm neurodiverse, so sometimes I think if I don't say it now, I might forget it. So we can add in, if we've got some neurodiversity, we may get some bumping up against each other. I've got
yeah,
a client who's also neurodiverse, and sometimes there's like, let me finish, I let me finish, because we're both like, we're going to forget what we're saying. So yeah, you can get a lack of turn taking in relationship, and it's actually there are some real red flags I think for trauma. One is patience, the ability to wait, um,
mm,
for somebody to call you back. What happens when they keep ringing you 10 times? Well, they're anxious and they're struggling to wait. I see lots of, this is attachment stuff, isn't it? We're talking about here.
mm.
Actually a lot of what plays out is runs through our attachment styles. Can somebody leave a voicemail and then go do their thing and wait for you to call them back? Or are they kind of getting angry because they can't get hold of you and they don't know what you're doing?
Yeah.
So we get control issues around anxious attachments, jealousy. We can't talk about control and power without talking about jealousy. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think there's another one about when you're that triggered thinking, my thinking about the answering the phone, but there's also um can I go out? Who are you going out with? What time are you
Yeah.
coming back? The checking up. And I think you don't be late. And I
Yeah.
think there's sometimes there's been I remember there's situations where well you always pick me up and I don't like it. And that feels like you're checking up on me, whereas
Mm.
actually because they hadn't had the conversation, it was I'm concerned about you and I want to make sure that you get home safely.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was, well, you keep checking up on me. I'm not allowed out. Or
Yeah.
you tell me when I can go out. Those kinds of things,
Yeah. Where does
those
it
are
cross the
signs
line from
of
being
power and
controlling to
control.
being caring? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
do you have to ask your partner to can you go out? Or is it the wording again?
Yeah.
I'm planning on going out. Do you have anything? Have you got anything planned yourself?
I think, yeah, rather than asking
Or is it
permission, I see it as
okay?
consideration, because actually, if you've got kids, I've got fur babies, actually, if I'm planning to go to Liverpool on Friday to see friends, I need to know, are you able to look after the children? Yeah.
Yeah,
Actually letting somebody know I'm going to be out really late, so I'll get a cab back, so you can go to bed.
yeah,
They're considerations. When we're in relationships, this is, well, I don't need to tell you what time I'm coming home, I shouldn't need to tell you this, that, blah 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 blah. But actually there's a caring aspect of actually consideration, that actually I am going to stay out all night tonight because it's late. Particularly if you're living together, these conversations may not happen if you're not. And so yeah, that I'm coming back tonight or I'm not. Yeah.
yeah.
I
And
think
there's
there's a
a
lot of people who aren't used to being cared for. Maybe they've been on their own for a while, and then when they get into relationships and that person's like, "What time are you coming back?" Actually, what that's controlling. No, it's not. Actually, maybe they won't want to know what time you're coming back so they can have dinner ready.
yeah,
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 yeah. I had one this morning. I'm staying at a friend's, and it's kind of like, I'm like, "How long are you going to be?" Because I'm doing a recording, and it's like, "How long do you need me to be?" I was like, "Well, yeah, if you're not around for an hour or so, that would be helpful." And so yeah, it's there's why are we asking the conversations? Yeah, why does
yeah,
it matter what time I'm coming back? Why can't I come back at 4 o'clock in the morning? Or but actually the other person is trying to plan. And so
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
One of the
And
interesting things is when you put boundaries in, sometimes people don't like it. I remember arranging a lunch with a friend and saying to her, I've got I can get to you at 1, but I'll need to leave at 3. Yeah. Because I've got some appointments. And she was like, "Oh, I feel like I'm being squashed in here." And I was like, "Why?" Yeah, tell me why. And she was like, "Well, you're giving me what time you're leaving." And I'm like, "Well, for me, that works." But for her, it was like she translated it into, I'm somehow squeezing her in. I'm like, "Well, to be fair, I'm squeezing everything into, our lives, aren't we?" And so I'm a person who deals with time blocks because that's how I live my life. But for her, me
yes.
telling her what time I was leaving was what felt
Oh,
like really
rejection.
triggering. Yeah, really triggering. Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
3 hours for lunch was, quite adequate, but
Yeah.
yeah, they're telling her what time I'm leaving. And yet other friends may experience that completely differently. Like you and I will,
Oh
we
yeah, we
have
do.
these conversations of like,
Yeah.
we've got an hour here, or,
Yeah.
we've got a client at this time, or I'm going out for dinner at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And I just want to add in that time, that time you're coming home. It
yeah,
could be if you're going to come home after I've gone to bed, can you please sleep somewhere else because, or can you please be quiet because I've got to get up early in the morning.
yeah,
If I get woken up, I can't get back to sleep easily.
yeah,
And I think those are the kinds of things that people, I can come in whatever time I like, whoever it is. But
yeah,
there are reasons why. Because
yeah,
if you get woken up by somebody who's maybe had a lot to drink and they're going to be really loud and maybe snore a lot, or the other person, well, hold on a minute, I can't sleep and I've got to get up in the morning.
yeah,
So I think that's another one to add into the pot, really. It's just that gap consideration, because I hear that
yeah,
one a lot. You said maybe sleep in the spare room. Well, hold on a minute. Let's think about the consideration here.
yeah, yeah. The ability to, a lot of this is the lack of confidence in being able to find your voice and ask for what you need.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and living with the fact that we will hear the word no.
yeah,
It's okay.
yeah,
But I think when we hear that no, especially in a relationship, it can feel quite, it feels like we can be controlled or rejected, or it's that power. But actually, no, I don't really fancy that for dinner tonight.
yeah,
Or no, really, I'm not in the mood for sex. Or yeah, I'd rather not go to that restaurant. And I think that can be, if you say blandly no, that can feel really like you're being controlled. But if you could say it is the way you say it, well, you know
yeah,
what? I don't. I'm not sure I fancy Italian. Do you think we could have Chinese instead? What do you think? That's not a straight no, but it is a fact that we do have to accept that our partners or people in our lives are going to say no at times.
No, put boundaries in. I think this is very much linked to our childhood stuff, isn't it? Where we will have been raised in relationships where we've not been able to find our voice, not been able to have our say. We've been overpowered. We've not been able to have an opinion. Maybe our feelings have been invalidated. And
Yes.
so we learn as human beings to do that for ourselves. That, and we talked before about silence and how triggering that can be for yourself. And actually, yeah, when somebody says no, I don't want to hang out with you or today, or I can't do it today. The story we can make up is that we're not wanted, we're not
Yeah.
valued, or you don't want to do it. And we blame it. We often take on the responsibility of other people's stuff that and blame ourselves rather than, and this is, I think, where we can take care of the other by actually saying things like you can like if you get a no from somebody, if you're delivering a no, you can say not now, but when, because that
Yeah.
helps that person to know that actually I can't come out and play with you today, but actually I do have space on Thursday and Friday. And so many
Yeah.
people don't do this. They don't offer an
No.
alternative or a when we can, like, I don't want Italian tonight. And this is quite low level stuff we're talking about. Some of this stuff is like, what we're having for dinner may be not be massively triggering, but there may be other stuff that is really triggering.
I
Yeah,
think sex is a big one, and I know we
definitely.
talked a lot about sex,
Yeah,
but
initiating sex and being
yeah,
with rejected, that means I don't initiate it anymore. You don't initiate it anymore. So nobody's initiating.
yeah,
Yeah.
and one person says to the other, you know, whatever their introduction is, do you fancy it tonight? And the other person goes, just no.
Yeah.
That can really feel
Yeah.
huge rejection. One person has taken a lot of courage to ask that question, possibly, and then the other person says a blank no. They're not giving any reason, and then the person who initiated feels completely, well, you don't fancy me anymore, you don't want to be with me,
Yeah.
you don't want to have sex with me. They make up all those stories, whereas the person who said no could just say, I've got to get up early in the morning, and I've just washed my hair, and I won't have time in the morning to have a shower. So I'd rather, you know, could we just have a cuddle? Or I'm really tired tonight, but I mean, there are a million reasons we can give the explanation rather than just a
Yeah.
no.
It's just
So,
it's the taking care of in the now, isn't it? Do you
yeah.
think we should do a episode on rejection?
Oh, gosh, yes.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of how much that fits into our lives, whether it's asking that friend, whether we're sat here lonely because we're not asking somebody, do you want to go for a coffee or do you want to play badminton? How, that avoidance, rejection and avoidance, and how it
Mm.
shows up in our lives.
Yeah, because I think that rejection ties in so well with the control, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We feel controlled or we feel a need to control, but why? So I think one on rejection would be
And
really good.
actually, what happens in our brain with disappointment, depending how we're wired up, disappointment can crash us into some really vulnerable feelings. So you can either get shutting down, I'm not talking about it, I'm off, or you can get blowing up. So someone flips their lid and they've gone into survival mode.
Yeah,
We're not all wired up the same. Some of us have trauma history, so our brains, survival brain, may be working much bigger, much faster than someone else's. I think we should do one on trauma, actually,
it would be
how
good.
trauma changes the lens of the relationship.
Yes, that would be a good one as well.
Yeah, that probably could be a couple of episodes, actually, couldn't it? I'm just thinking, yeah, yeah, because we're often like, why is this person behaving this way? But it's actually rooted in what they've lived through. I've had somebody say to me, why are they doing this? And I'm like, I think they've gone into, kind of a real survival mode here. Yeah,
Yeah, and before we end, I think I want to bring in the fact that I was in a relationship that was abusive,
yeah,
but if only I had more knowledge, if only each of us had more knowledge, if only we'd both been in therapy at the time,
yeah,
it could have been a very different story. I felt I was being controlled, but
yeah,
because he had been abused, he'd been sexually, physically, emotionally, every way you can think of abuse as a child. So he had complex PTSD. There was no
yeah,
question about it. So what happened was that he would have lack of trust. He needed to control his environment, but I controlled mine. Yeah, all of that played into
yeah,
things. And I was fiercely independent. And whilst I could be very empathetic, as soon as it touched me, it was stop controlling me.
yeah, yeah.
So,
And that ability to respond with, why is this important to you? How can I help? And owning, relationships are 50-50. So we often take on responsibility for other people's stuff. Or what I see is, you need to go to therapy. This is your shit, rather than
yes,
actually, how am I responding to you that is helpful or unhelpful? We just
yeah,
don't ask, do we? What do you need in this moment? We're so busy assuming that we don't ask, is this okay for you? Or yeah, we don't tread tentatively enough sometimes. We make too many assumptions without checking things out, but that takes a level of awareness and vulnerability to
mm,
ask. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. And that's way before I even started training as a therapist, let
yeah,
alone I had no idea. So looking back, hindsight is wonderful, but it just is owning that and saying, I played quite a big part in that
yeah. And
relationship.
that takes a lot of guts, doesn't it, to say, actually, I could have done things better. But actually, we're learning all the time. When you know better, you can do better. But actually,
Yeah.
you can't beat yourself up for your younger self that didn't know. Yeah.
No, no, but
Yeah,
I think
I
that
think
was how I
self
operated.
compassion and forgiveness for our younger selves is required, isn't it? And sometimes our younger selves could be yesterday. Yeah, it doesn't have to be 10 years ago. Our younger self can be yesterday. Like, what I did to survive yesterday might be what I want to choose to do
Yeah.
today. Yeah. Should we pause? That it feels like we've kind of a lot, and I notice how all the threads, like attachment comes in, and
Yes.
yeah, they're also interlinked, aren't they? It's hard to pull
Everything is,
out a
isn't it?
subject
Yeah,
and not go
so
on to
yeah,
something else.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But
absolutely.
yeah, disappointment, rejection, finding your voice, what goes on in the brain. I think those might be, how do you even achieve safety, enough safety in a relationship for somebody to be able to speak up about vulnerable stuff? Yeah,
Yeah.
we
So
could,
next
what
time.
we've got, yeah, plenty of more food for thought for more episodes.
Yes. And I hope if people come up with ideas and suggestions, we're always interested in that too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, get back to us. Tell us what you think. Tell us if it's what you're is helpful, and if
Yeah.
there are subjects that might be more helpful.
Yeah. If there's something that you
Absolutely.
want to hear more of, drop us a message and we can explore that for you. Yeah.
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 Anyway, that's all for
Lovely
now.
catching up with you, Wendy, as
Yeah, you
usual. I
too.
love these conversations. They just excite my little brain. And yeah,
Yeah,
we
me
could just go
too.
on and on and on, couldn't we? There's no end to this stuff.
As we do.
Yeah,
So,
there might be people in my life like, shut up.
so bye to everybody and bye to you, Mel. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye, Wendy.
Bye.